Mornings in Grafton Penitentiary began with metal cell doors clanging open, meal trays rattling over concrete, keys jingling on the guard captain's belt. My own day started more quietly. I unlocked the library, snapped on the humming fluorescent lights, and inhaled the dependable scent of paper decaying at different speeds. In here, the walls were seafoam green rather than institution gray, the only color the inmates saw all week. The room was my refuge as much as theirs. I had been the prison librarian for 7 unremarkable years, long enough to memorize where every mass-market paperback, legal code, and donated thriller belonged. The first oddity showed itself on a Tuesday in mid-November, when the prairie wind sounded like someone pouring sand against the narrow windows. I was shelving returns from C-Block when I opened a copy of Stephen King's Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. A 2-page spread was stippled with black rectangles. Not sloppy doodles, not lines drawn in anger, but precise redactions, as though a government censor with a razor-tip marker had gone to work. I frowned, flipped forward, and found more. Whole sentences gone, boxed in midnight ink. My stomach tensed in the hush of metal shelves. Vandalism wasn't new. Bored men tore corners from pages to roll cigarettes or wrote rap lyrics in margins, but this was different. The redactions looked deliberate, the marker strokes even, the choice of words systematic. My first thought was that someone hated King's prose. I took the novel to the circulation desk and opened the incident log. By noon, I discovered 4 more altered books: The Count of Monte Cristo, Escape from Alcatraz, Papillon, and, curiously, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Each bore the same style of blackout, black marker, square precision, only on certain paragraphs. Over lunch, while guards traded jokes about Sunday football, I read those passages side by side, trying to glimpse what lay beneath the ink. That was when I noticed the pattern. The redacted lines lined up across books. A phrase erased in Dumas corresponded to a phrase erased in King, like blanks in a crossword. I copied the remaining visible words onto a legal pad. I stopped halfway through when the sense of it hit me. Norsters after lights. Bring bolt shears. Vent shaft. 37 paces. I pressed my pen to the pad so hard the tips snapped. Someone was using my library to map out an escape. I shut the books, heart hammering. The prison's last escape attempt had been before my time, 2 decades ago, ending in gunfire near the river. Our warden boasted about that bullet-scarred legend during orientation, a tale meant to cow new staff. Grafton's a fortress, she had said. Only ghosts get past our perimeter. Even so, here was a ghost in process, smuggling instructions beneath my nose. I should have marched straight to the warden. That would have been protocol. But images flickered inside me. Benny Ortiz, who spent afternoons teaching illiterate bunkmates how to read Dr. Seuss out loud. Jamal Carter, who wrote letters to his 7-year-old daughter every Friday and asked me to check his spelling. Howard Klein, a stooped Vietnam vet who shook uncontrollably unless he was absorbed in chess manuals. I knew their crimes, but also their jokes, their progress, their fears. Whoever was redacting these books might be any one of them. Maybe someone I liked heard a rumor about a reduced sentence and couldn't wait. Or maybe it was someone violent. Either way, I felt responsible. I spent the rest of that day replaying scenarios. Alert staff and spark a library raid. Ignore the redactions and risk a breakout. Quietly investigate on my own. I convinced myself curiosity was safer than panic and safer than ignorance. That night, after final count, I smuggled the altered books to my apartment off grounds. Beneath a desk lamp, I photographed each page, imported the images into a photo editor, and inverted the colors. White text turned black. Black redactions turned ghostly gray. Slowly, letters emerged, not entirely legible but close enough for guesses. I cross-referenced. The full message read, Freda, lights out, 22 o'clock, North Service stairwell. Shears for bolts. Follow, vent to laundry. Guard shift, 22:15 to 22:25. Fence shadow at generator equals blind spot. Run southwest to tunnel drain, 37 paces from pipe. The plan was meticulous, timed to 10-minute intervals. Whoever compiled it knew the building intimately. A guard? A trustee? My pulse galloped while I scrolled, the cursor flickering like alarm lights. I hardly slept, and when I did, I dreamed of pages flapping like bats against barred windows. Wednesday, I arrived early and stationed myself by the return slot. Inmates funneled through after breakfast, each dropping books on the rubber mat. I greeted them as usual, but watched their hands, calloused, tattooed, trembling, indifferent. None of them met my eyes long. I logged the returns and scanned spines for new blackout. 2 more books bore ink, Great Expectations, and a military field manual. The field manual chilled me. If someone was blacking out tactical diagrams, the plot might include weapons. I slipped both volumes under the counter. Then I noticed something stranger. The blackout this time was dry, as though done days ago. Where and when had they marked it? Night rounds locked the library. I alone kept keys, except for facilities during fire drills, yet pages kept changing overnight. At noon I confronted Gary, the corrections officer assigned to library watch. Gary was young, cheeks pink as bubble gum, polite to a fault. "Do you unlock in here after hours?" I asked. He blinked. "No, ma'am. Library's sealed after final count, same as always." "Anyone else?" "Only maintenance if there's a leak. Haven't been no leaks." I thanked him, unconvinced. Either Gary was lying or someone had a copy of my keys. That afternoon I checked the key log in administration. My signature was the only one recorded this week. I felt a lurch of vertigo. Pages redacted themselves, keys walked by themselves. Paranoia began to hiss in my ears. In the staff lot after shift, I spotted the warden marching toward her Yukon, cell phone glued to her head. She radiated military efficiency, hair slicked back, shoulders squared like a parade commander. I almost jogged over, but an inner tug stopped me. I would look foolish with half-formed theories about disappearing words. She would seize every book, cancel library privileges, maybe search my apartment for evidence. The library meant everything to the inmates. And to me, I needed proof, steel-clad as a cell door, before I accused anyone. That evening, I set a trap. Before leaving, I arranged a neat row of 5 paperback westerns on a cart by the biography section. True Grafton aficionados rarely touch biographies. Between pages 70 and 71 of each western, I placed a slip of tissue rubbed with graphite. If someone opened the book, the powder would smudge. I locked the door, snapped a photo of the knob, and left. At 2:17, insomnia drove me back. The night sky was brittle with stars. Frost crusted the yard. I parked near the staff entrance and used my badge to enter. The corridor was silent except for the drone of vents. When I reached the library, my stomach plunged. The doorknob angle had changed, just a hair, but not enough to trigger suspicion on camera reviews. I inserted my key as quietly as I could and pushed the door. Inside, the fluorescents were off, yet a faint glow slid across the floor. Somebody's flashlight. I crouched behind a book truck, breath locked in my throat. Paper rustled near the westerns. A figure in dark clothes glided between aisles. Not an inmate's orange, not a guard's uniform. Civilian jacket. I edged sideways to peek. A man in his 30s, sandy hair, glasses perched on his head. I recognized him. Dylan Marks, assistant facilities manager, allegedly pursuing an online MBA. He was one of the few staff who ever checked out books, and he held a marker in his gloved hand. Dylan lifted the Count of Monte Cristo, flipped to the middle, and began blacking out lines with quick, practiced strokes. My trap westerns lay open beside him. Graphite smears visible under his portable lantern. He hadn't even noticed the dust. Questions skittered through me. Why a civilian staff member would help prisoners? Whether he was being blackmailed? How deep this conspiracy ran? My phone rested in my pocket. I could film him, gather the proof I needed. But instinct urged caution. I eased backward, closed the door, and crept to the corridor before turning on my camera. My hand shook so badly the footage blurred. Yet one clear frame captured Dylan from behind, marker poised above Edmond Dantes's oath of vengeance. I exhaled, cold air stinging my teeth. Back home, I stitched together what I knew. Dylan worked maintenance. Maintenance possessed master keys. He could enter any room, any time. He was leaving instructions for someone who had access to the books during day hours, most likely an inmate library clerk. The plan unfolded like an assembly line. Dylan inserted coded pages overnight. The inmate decoded them by daylight and memorized. Librarians returned the books to circulation as camouflage. Thursday morning before shift, I printed 3 stills of Dylan in action. Finally, I had evidence. Yet something, again, held me from barging into the warden's office. If I reported Dylan, the administration would suspend all inmate library jobs. Benny, Jamal, Howard, the entire fragile community we'd built would suffer collective punishment for one man's scheme. I decided to talk to Dylan first. He was in the basement workshop repairing a sump pump. Metallic clanks echoed as I descended. When Dylan saw me, he straightened, wiping grease on his coveralls. "Morning, Miss Baxter. Something broken upstairs?" "I know what you're doing," I said. My voice sounded alien, too soft. His expression froze, then rearranged itself into a casual half-smile. "Sorry?" I pulled out the photos. "You're writing an escape plan in my books. I have you on camera." He stared a breath longer than surprise could excuse. Then he gestured to the pump, as if needing to finish. I didn't move. Finally he spoke. "They have my brother, Stateville. He's dying. Cancer. 6 months left. Parole board denied compassionate release. He's Category A violent offender, but the warden there said if he ends up in Grafton Hospital, she'll look the other way for visits. I'd tried legal routes. Dead ends. So, I'm helping someone here, yes. A trade. They promised to arrange something for my brother." His eyes glistened but held no tears. I weighed the tale. It felt too cinematic to trust, yet not impossible. Prison trades wove morality into knots daily. "Who's they?" I asked. He shook his head, lips pinched. "Names would sign my death warrant. Or my brother's." He stepped closer, voice low. "Look, Marjorie. Library is the only place where words slip past scanners. You expose me, nothing changes. Except Grafton goes to lockdown, every inmate punished, and my brother still dies alone." I stared at the grease-streaked cement, recalling my own sibling. Charlotte, lost to opioids, estranged until it was too late. The ache still pricked after 10 years. Could I condemn a man desperate to see his brother? "You're gambling with lives," I whispered. "Guards may be killed in an escape. This isn't a riot, it's one person slipping out, no violence." They picked a blind spot, same as any bureaucrat picks a loophole. His moral relativism nauseated me. I turned away. "I'll think about what to do," I said, and climbed the stairs before he could protest. All day I felt phantom eyes on me. The inmates sensed tension even when undisclosed. At 3:00, Howard Klein returned a chess book and lingered. "You okay, Ms. Baxter?" he asked, voice shaking from Parkinson's. "Tired is all," I told him. That night I reviewed the escape instructions again. Friday, 22:00. Tomorrow. No time left for dithering. Reporting early Friday might avert the attempt but still provoke mass punishment. Yet allowing it risked disaster. I imagined inmates scaling razor wire, searchlights sweeping, sirens wailing, bloodshed carving itself onto my conscience. I needed the planner. The inmate decoding Dylan's messages would know if violence was intended. I searched checkout records for the books with blackout. Only 3 inmates checked out all of them. Ortiz, Carter, and one more, Ralph Doc. Hensley, former Army Corps engineer serving life for double homicide. Doc was 58, slender, polite, always reading civil engineering texts. I'd once asked why. "Keeps my brain angles sharp," he'd said. Friday morning I called Doc aside while Gary watched the desk. We sat in the reading nook amid redacted recliners. "I need honesty, Doc," I began. "Why are sections blacked out of certain books?" His face stayed blank, but the skin under his eyes tightened. "Don't know what you mean, Ms. B." "Huh?" I placed Papillon on his lap, open to a redacted page. His fingers traced the squares. "You're planning something tomorrow night," I said. "If it goes wrong, people die. Talk to me. Doc rested his elbows on his knees. Minutes passed. The only sound was the hum of the vent. Finally, he whispered, "It's not violence. No weapons. Just walking through holes already in the system." He closed the book. "I never meant you trouble. You've been good to us." "Stop it, then." "Can't. Clock's moving. Favors owed." He looked at me softly, almost like pity. "Sometimes the institution is wrong, Ms. B. Men rot for mistakes of youth. They have families waiting." I thought of Charlotte again. She'd waited for me to forgive her until she couldn't wait anymore. "If someone gets hurt," I said, "I'll never forgive you. Or myself." Doc nodded, as though he understood. "Then help us make sure no one does." "Help? How?" "A little silence," he said, "or a little timing." My head spun. Here was the crossroads. Betray them or abet them. On break, I walked the exercise yard, autumn air wetting my lung. Razor wire glinted under ragged clouds. The prison seemed ancient, eternal, yet each bolt ultimately installed by mortal hands. I wondered whether justice was equally man-made, equally fallible. At 19:30, after last library call, I gathered the redacted books and carried them to the incinerator chute in the workshop. Dylan was absent. Good. I hesitated. Burning literature felt sacrilegious. But I dropped them in. Ash would erase the code, postpone the attempt. Even if they had memorized, last-minute confusion might stop them. I watched flames lick the pages, felt heat sting my cheeks, smelled ink blistering. Then I went to my car and cried until my chest ached. Back at home, I phoned the warden's office, got voicemail, began to speak, then hung up. I poured bourbon, paced, sat, stood again. At 21:45, I drove back to the prison. The guard at the staff gate signed me in with a raised eyebrow. "Forgot something?" "Catalog report," I lied. Inside, alarm lights glowed amber. I hurried to the North Service stairwell, heart roaring. 22 o'clock. Lights out. Rippled through the cell blocks. The usual hush followed. I waited, pressed against cold cinder block. No footsteps. No whisper. Minutes ticked. 22:05. 22:10. At 22:14, a shape emerged on the landing below. Doc Hensley, clothed in prison blues, carrying nothing but determination in his shoulders. He started upward, froze when he saw me. We locked eyes through dim emergency bulbs. "I burned the books," I said. "Go back." He exhaled, a sound of resignation more than anger. "Too late, Ms. B." From the corridor behind me, a door clanked. Two more inmates, Benny and Jamal, slipped out, guided by Dylan, who brandished a clipboard like credentials. He saw me and halted, expression torn between appeal and fury. "Call it off," I said. Doc approached slowly. "We can't." He nodded toward Benny. "His mother's funeral tomorrow. She raised his boy. Bureau denied furlough." He pointed to Jamal. "Daughter scheduled for heart surgery. They won't let him donate tissue. We're not escaping life. Only a day." My breath caught. One day. They intended to return? The idea felt simultaneously absurd and noble, an echo of ancient myths where heroes descend into forbidden realms to snatch a single blessing. "Back before sunrise," Doc promised. "No violence, no alarms, no one even notices until count. And we'll be back for that." I should have yelled. Instead, I whispered, "The fence shadowed by the generator?" Doc smiled faintly, surprised I knew. "Yes." He touched my sleeve, soft as gauze. Then they moved past, ghostly blue silhouettes sinking into stairwell darkness. Dylan paused. "Thank you," he mouthed, then followed. I stood alone, heart bucking. A guard's footsteps approached from the main corridor. I slipped into a janitor closet. The guard passed without glancing in. For hours I sat on an overturned bucket, trembling, questioning my sanity. And around 4 o'clock, distant in the yard, I heard a dog barking, then silence. Dawn tinted the tiny window gray. I returned to the stairwell at 5:30, half expecting blood and shackles. Instead, I found Benny, Jamal, and Doc descending, clothes muddy, faces streaked but calm. Dylan wasn't with them. "Where's Dylan?" I whispered. "Had to go see his brother," Benny said quietly. "He'll be back." I bit my lip. Guards would clock his absence at shift change, 6:00. Panic darted across my thoughts. Doc caught my eyes. "He'll make it," he said. They slid into their units before morning count. I walked to my office, hands numb, sat at the desk until the intercom blared 6:15, count clear, no alert, no mention of missing maintenance staff yet. At 7:05, Dylan strode through the staff entrance, jeans caked with mud. I watched from the corridor. He headed straight to custodial, swiped his badge, pretended to scan a checklist. Moments later, I heard him greet a coworker like any dawn. He had slipped back in. The day proceeded like any other. The prison remained a fortress, no sirens, no code lock. Somewhere, perhaps across state lines, a daughter hugged her father, a son mourned with dignity, a dying man held his brother's hand. I wrote no incident report. I taped no redacted books. The plan's ashes cooled in the incinerator, untraceable. Weeks later, during inventory, I discovered a new volume on the shelf, a donated copy of the Odyssey. Inside, a sliver of paper bore a single line of blackout poetry. "You kept the door open just long enough for us to touch home. We will return the key." I replaced the paper, closed the book, and shelved it where epics belong, among long journeys whose truths hide between the lines.